Welcome, welcome. Thanks for coming. I am just going to introduce us with a couple of comments about this project after I pray. Hand it over to Brett, who will give us an update on where we're at in the logistics of the project itself. And then I think myself and the other elders will come up and field questions that would be more for us than for Brett, if there are any of those. All right? So thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. Let's pray. Our Father, thank you for the situation in which we find ourselves, a committed church family, a growing town and county, and an active eldership, a supportive, joyful congregation, a committed group of deacons serving, and limited space to house all of this. And we thank you for the building that we've inherited and this property that we received from the church family that went before us, at least for most of us. Thank you for the wisdom of those elders and the dedication of those people and the blessing it's been to us. Pray that we would be wise managers of this and developers of it as you guide us and our church family together. And I pray that this will be a fruitful meeting tonight. And for that to happen, I pray for the wisdom and strength and support of your Spirit, and that even this businessy meeting would feel like the culture of the gospel, that it would feel like a normal meeting of Parker Hills, minus some Bible study and preaching. So I pray for all that, for your glory, in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so you know, I hope, most of the reasons that we're even involved in this. One of them, and the most obvious one, are the limitations of this physical plant contrasted with our needs, the parking problem, the kid ministry space problem. There aren't offices for staff, the auditorium, limited elbow room. Did I mention parking already? There's like 8 of these things on a list. So there are those limitations based on this building that we have and property. In addition to that, the church has been growing pretty steadily for the last 10, 12 years. Our county, our town have been growing pretty steadily for the last 10 or 12 years with no real sign of slowing down. Like it or not, Parker's no longer a small town. We have multifamily units everywhere we look. The traffic's getting worse. And whenever I see these huge dirt trucks driving down Parker Road, I'm like, all right, that pays for Connor's salary. You know, I'm just like, that. Nice to see you. Hope you're enjoying your sabbatical. Or whatever. I mean, you know what I mean. And so there's people just flocking into this area. And that gives us reason to think, all right, well, maybe we need to think strategically about the size of the building that we have. A third element in our thinking, and there's a bunch of these, but I'm just going to list 3 or 4 of them. A third element is we continue to, in our encounters with other pastors, other churches, other church members in our area, we continue to feel like we have a unique contribution to make to the scene of churches in Parker. I'm not trying to brag or pat us on the back. We're far from perfect, far from perfect. However, there are not a lot of churches that are focused on the 3 simple things that we've inherited from our forebears who planted Bellevue Bible Chapel 70 years ago and then gave us this building and passed it off to this group of elders we have today. Those 3 things: the centrality of the gospel, that we will stay centered, dogmatically, ferociously, consistently, joyfully on the cross, and expect the cross will do all the work in our lives and in people's lives that we want to see done. A commitment to the sufficiency of Scripture, that when the Bible speaks about a thing, we'll speak about a thing. And when it's silent, we'll be silent. And we'll do our best to draw lines where the Bible draws its lines, not where we're most comfortable or the tradition we've inherited or whatever. The sufficiency of Scripture. When we get together as a church, we want studying the Bible to be somewhere pretty central in what we do. And then the third piece, the power of community, that church is the people and the relationships. And there are wonderful churches that are growing like mad in our greater Denver area. And their focus isn't as much the power of community. I'm not bagging on them. I mean wonderful churches. I just wouldn't function well on those staffs because it's just not the way I feel. Their focus is the big weekend meeting and a big, draw, and they do a marvelous meeting and they preach well and the music is amazing. And the meeting is sort of the thing that makes that church that church. And that's just not what Parker Hills is. We're not primarily the meeting. We try to make the weekend gathering really nutritious for your soul, really honoring to God, really helpful for the needs that you bring to the moment. But ultimately, we're going to grow better if we're in relationship with someone who knows us, sees us, is speaking into our life, praying for us, and we see that all over in who we are as Parker Hills. So that combination of those three things, it just doesn't show up everywhere. I just met a pastor. Oh man, Highlands Baptist Church just hired a pastor. Yeah, anybody know about that church? Yeah, Highlands just hired a pastor a couple of months ago, maybe a few weeks ago. He and I had lunch on Thursday. We share very similar values and passions and ideas about the church. And he said to me, Josh, what are the other churches in our whole area that are like that just believe that pastor only has a couple tools in his toolbox and he just should keep using those. And it takes time and it's slow and not glamorous, but eventually it'll transform people. And I named a few. And I said to him, there are a bunch of good churches around that I respect and appreciate. There aren't a lot that are what you're describing. So again, I'm not bagging on any church. I'm not trying to lift our church up. I'm just saying we are a unique thing by the passion, the sense of calling that our elders have, and it seems most of our church members share, and we want to replicate that. And so we feel like we have a unique contribution to make to the kingdom in this area. So that's a third piece. And then a fourth one is we would really like to continue planting churches. We haven't changed our, that's not our end game. Our end game is more directly, specifically including the name of Jesus. But planting churches is the main strategy that we're committed to. But we planted one and we're still supporting that church planter, and we're pretty maxed in terms of what we can manage financially. And so it is a financial consideration. It's not only a financial consideration. We could keep doing it. God, if we were to tell our church family, look, we have a new church planter and we want to support him full time, would you think about upping your giving a little? And I know people would. I know they would. I don't mean to paint this as an either or. But we do believe that if we had a larger building and a larger church that fit in it, which seems reasonable because the pace our area is growing and all of that, it seems like we might be able to carve out space in our budget for a couple of church planting residents, men who would come here with their family and stay for 2 or 3 years like a medical residency and just watch and observe and serve us, but learn to do church, at least the way we try to do it. Or some interns who go, or a church planner, but I'd like to experiment. And so an intern comes for 6 months and works here, or a resident for 3 years. And we'd love to offer some pay for that. And that, it seems to me, would accelerate the opportunity and the likelihood that we have to plant churches. So those are like 3 or 4 of the reasons that go into our thinking as elders about why expanding our physical space would be desirable. Let me throw in one more. This is kind of a, I don't quite know what category to put this reason in, but none of our elders loves the idea of going to multiple services. We could just do that, I guess, ad infinitum. We could, 2, 3, 5 weekend services. We could do that. A lot of churches do. We don't love that for a variety of reasons that are beyond the scope of what I want to say now. But I can talk about that with you later if you'd like. That's totally fine. That being the case, at some point, we will reach a threshold where we can't expand our building anymore, right? And we could say we're at the threshold right now. We're going to have a church of 300 or so people and plant out of this, and that's the size. We're at the max size we're going to be. We have to figure out ways to either turn people away or more rapidly plant churches out of this size building and congregation. We could do that now, just being realistic. If we expand the plant as the plan is, if we expand the building and the property and parking to accommodate a church, Brett, what's the number in here on the new plan? 740 or something? Around 700. If we have a church around 700 and Douglas County continues to grow and God keeps our elders healthy and we pass the church off to other elders in the future, they may be a congregation that fills up their building. And then they'll have to go, do we want to have 2 services or not? And if they're still of the same mindset we are, they'll say not. And they'll have to figure out a way to do something else and not continue to expand. Here's the deal. I feel more comfortable saying to a future group of elders, We gave you the biggest building we possibly could on this property that was the least radical change we could make. The alternative was to just sell this building and move to a different property. At some point, you have to go, we're not going to grow any further. I feel more comfortable drawing that line once we've maxed out the physical property that we have. So I don't know if that resonates with you or even makes sense. It's a hard concept for me to articulate, and I don't know why. It seems fairly simple in my head, but I'm not sure I'm getting it across very well. I feel more comfortable drawing the line at biggest possible congregation at whatever that number is when we've maxed out our property, rather than when we've just maxed out the building that our forebears gave us on this property. In other words, if I can put it this way, without trying to be snide, I'd rather grow church planters than grass on this property. So that's just a commitment of mine. I'd like to get the building as big as we can based on the property we have, and then figure out from there what we do when it's full. And so we have a good option on the property now, expensive one, but a good one that's not completely radical and suddenly has us doing church in, East Aurora or something. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about that our elders have talked about that have us here. So I'll just stop now. Any questions about that stuff? The elders will be back up later for other questions, but any questions about those things that are hot on your mind before we have Brett come up and talk about the plan itself? And we'll have the other elders up here later. Some people have asked, is this just Josh's thing? That's probably because I'm the one who can't ever stop talking. And so it can sometimes come across like, I don't mind answering questions on the spot. But all the elders are on board with this thing, and we'll get them up here to answer some questions later. They're all on board because I told them to be on board. It doesn't sound convincing. I just realized, I'm like, oh. So it sounds like it's still my thing, but yeah, I think they're all on board. No questions for me about that? All right, we'll hand it over to Brett. I'll be back up with questions later with the other elders.
Okay, so the plan tonight is not necessarily to go through what most of you have already heard. It's more of an update of where we are now and where we're going to be going forward. So we do have some blueprints in the back. They are really, really preliminary. That's just an idea of what we could do inside the building. We have some renderings from our architect here. That's some ideas of what it might look like if we grew the building. And those are just basic ideas. If you want to talk about that afterwards, I'm happy to stay as long as you want to do that. Don't get too attached to any of those, because we're quite a ways away from saying that's what it's going to look like, or that's where your Sunday school class is going to be. But I'd like to take us through just a little bit. Josh kind of alluded to it or told us about it. The overall project is kind of a twofold project. The first one is to increase the site, or to improve the site and get up to about 145 parking spots. For reference, right now, I think we have about 87 paved spots. And if you leave here before most people have left on a Sunday morning, there's about 30 or so cars parked in the grass where there's not a parking spot, okay? So that's the first part of it, is site work to increase the parking up to 145 spaces. And then included with what we have submitted to the county for approval in what we call phase 2 of our site improvement is a building expansion. And it's not a final building expansion, but it meets the pressing needs that we have right now, which is to increase the lobby size, which we would need if we were in 2 services so that we could have hall passing back and forth. The next one is huge, and it would increase classroom space for all ages. I know we were talking to Sarah this morning. Sunday school is just busting out everywhere. We think we're full in here. You should talk about what's going on downstairs. If we went to 2 services, or if we expand any more, we are desperately short of classroom space for all ages. That includes adult classroom space too. So to carry through some of what I understand are the elders' visions in adult classrooms, we need spaces for those too. So we're not just talking about little kid young people's. We're talking about all ages. And then the last part of that process would be to remodel our basement and improve the space that we currently have. So we would improve it as far as functionality, and we would also improve it from a security standpoint. In whatever it was, 26 or 27 years ago when the building was constructed, there's different ideas maybe about the best way to have single entrances and whatnot for young people. So that's kind of the overall project. We submitted a plan to Douglas County. First off, real quick, we went and we said, as Josh said, what's the maximum that we could do on our site so that we didn't end up having to go back and redo things as we proceed down this path. So theoretically, we will progress in our improvements both in the site and the building, and those would remain as we go on. We wouldn't have to rip it out and start over again. That's the plan. So we actually have a two-phase site improvement plan. We submitted it to Douglas County in April. And at the current time, we are in step 8 of 10. If you were at the Family Bible Hour, I don't know, several months ago, we were at step 6. Step 8 basically gets us very, very close to the end of the process. So the big thing we were getting through last time we talked was the referral process, where all the government agencies get our plans and make their notes and comments and, yeah, we would approve this, or we would approve this only if you did this. A very significant part of what the overall site would look like. So that was step 8 of 10, and that's completed, and most of the responses were very benign. We expected those responses, but there is an asterisk next to it. So the asterisk next to it is a couple of responses, both from Parker Water and Sanitation District and also South Metro Fire. And we'll talk about those here in just a sec. So we should have the final approval on our two-phase site improvement plan in somewhere around 6 weeks, depending on how we deal with some of the comments that we'll talk about here in just a second. So that would give us the approval to improve the parking up to 145 spots. It would also be the initial approval that we would need to expand the building, like you would see in the blueprints or like we talked about. All right, let's talk about a couple of the comments, because this is where the rubber meets the road here a little bit. So South Metro Fire and Rescue actually hit us or came back with 2 comments that we were not expecting. Neither was our engineer. The first one was they're going to require us to add an additional fire hydrant on the property. So we currently have a fire hydrant, and I'll have a picture of it to show you in a minute, on the property. We thought that would be sufficient. South Metro Fire and Rescue said that's not sufficient. They're concerned about flow and some other things we'll talk about. They said you have to have a hydrant. They also said when you do your building, we are going to require you to put fire suppression sprinklers in the building. That we knew. What we were not aware of was they also said, and due to our current flow requirements of that, we will not allow you to feed that fire suppression system out of a cistern. So our plan forward was we were going to feed that fire suppression system out of an on-site well and cistern to meet that requirement. They said your system wouldn't meet our flow requirements unless it was humongous. They have a phenomenal flow requirement of 1,000 gallons a minute for 45 minutes. So you are talking about a lot of water. So then they said, and because we're going to require you to sprinkle the building, you're going to have to be included into Parker Water and Sanitation District. So we are currently on a well and septic. Our plan was to keep that well and septic until we moved into an additional phase in the building. But this initial phase 1 and phase 2, the site improvement and the building improvement, we were planning on staying on a well and septic. So that was our biggest wrinkle, if you will. into the comments and caused some delay. We met with Parker Water and Sanitation District. So the first thing that we did was we went to the leadership at Parker Water and San and said, we would like to get your approval to just do a fire tap. So what we asked for was a line simply from the fire hydrant that would run to the building that would only be used if our fire sprinkling system went off. And they flatly denied it. They said, we don't do that. We don't plan on doing that. You have to connect into Parker Water and San. When you connect into their water, they also require you to connect into the public sewer. So they said you have to include both water and sewer, and here are the challenges now that we face if that happens. There's an inclusion fee of about $250,000 to $300,000. That's just money you pay Parker Water and San to have public water and sewer. There's no infrastructure cost. That's just to be included in the district. In addition to that, if you don't have sufficient water beneath the property, then there's an additional up to maybe even $100,000 on top of that just to get the inclusion, just to actually sign up for it. In addition to that, we would have very high infrastructure costs here. And I'm going to show you quickly what that looks like. So you can see this is an aerial view of the property. Joy Lutheran to the west. The yellow dot right now, that is where our current hydrant is, down in the far corner there. So when you connect to public water, you cannot just bring the line from the hydrant into the building. Parker Water and Sanitation requires you to loop the system, meaning that the system actually is fed by an 8-inch main from both directions. So what we would have to do, if that's the case, we would have to run a line from the hydrant, which is where the 8-inch main currently is, north across our west property line. We would feed the building out of that line. We would have to add the hydrant. That's where the hydrant would go. We would then have to purchase an easement or get an easement, either from Joy Lutheran or from our neighbor just a little bit to the north of them. And then we would have to connect that 8-inch line back into the water main that runs north-south on Pine Drive. We've checked with Parker, the city of Parker. They will not let us close Pine Drive to do that, which means they would have to be bored underneath the road. So this is, I don't know what that is. That might be 1,000 feet of 8-inch water pipe buried basically 10 feet below the ground. It is significant cost. The boring cost to get underneath the road is a significant cost as well. That's the water. This is the sewer. No, but let me back up. It's doable. I mean, it can be done. You can do anything with enough money, but it made us catch our breath, obviously. The sewer has its own difficulties. So the sewer, which is the orange line now, would come out of the building. It would go to the south. It would come back into Parker Hills Court. And then the place that we would have to tie into the public sewer is in front of Joy Lutheran, about halfway down their property line. The problem there is sewage flows downhill, obviously, and we do not believe that we have sufficient fall from where it would come out of our building on the west side, have a gravity flow all the way down into the place that we'd have to hook into Parker Water and Sanitation main lines. Typically, there are solutions to that. As a matter of fact, Tim has given me some phenomenal information on some systems that we could do to use that would solve that problem. One of them is like a forced main. The problem is Parker Water and Sanitation doesn't allow forced mains from a private or a commercial property into their main line. So that would require special approval for them as well. So right now, this is our biggest hurdle right now. And if you saw some of the prayer requests in our in the app, um, this is it. So what did we do? What would you do? Well, here's what we did. We went back and we said this. We said, would you reconsider letting us get a fire tap? And is Carl here? Yeah. I think he was his brother-in-law. We can thank for this. But so we started first. Parker Hills, when we built this building, when they built the building, they actually extended the water main up to the corner property there. And as we informed Parker Water and Sand as part of our request to them, look, we put that line in already. They came back with, we don't know why we allowed you to put that line in, because if we put a line in, you're really being serviced by Parker Water, and you should have been included in the district then. So my first remark was, well, go back and check. Maybe we already are. And he said, no, obviously you're not. But he said this then. So then I said, okay, we would like you to reconsider. And here's why we'd like you to reconsider. You kind of already are giving us a fire tap. I mean, you've allowed us to extend the pipe to the property line. You're already, in some respects, giving us a fire tap. And he said, I think we can make it happen, but we have to go back and talk to leadership. So that was a week and a half ago. He said he would try and have an answer for us the first of this past week. And I've been in contact with him. Our engineer's been in contact with him, and we don't have any word back yet. So hopefully that means that they are trying to work out the details. I don't think Parker Water and Sanitation has ever allowed just a fire tap. So if they did, then it would be a first. And so so I don't know if you remember, I don't know, several maybe months ago now, we were talking about the building process, and we said there's one thing that we can be absolutely certain of: there's going to be problems, and this is one of them. And so what I've determined, is we lay it before our Lord, and we say, you either solve this fire tap problem, or you provide significant amounts more money if this is going to go forward. So we are praying earnestly about that. Hopefully we'll have an answer on that this week, but it's something we would ask you to pray about too. If it happens, we will stand and say, God did this because this is the first. And the amazing part about it is, if it happens, humanly, it happened 26 years ago when they put the line in. Who does that? Who has a God like ours? Anyhow, that's where we are. Only a Davidson can pray, can cry in a construction meeting. Okay. I'm sorry. But seriously. Okay, the construction schedule then. So we had three options. So the first option that we were working hard toward, that we've been working hard toward, and that we've talked about is we get the approval, we finish before the weather hits with the site improvement, which would do, and I'll show you the site improvement in just a minute, which would increase our parking up to 145 spots. There was some delay with the referral comments, getting them back. There was a couple-week delay there. And then the issue with the Parker Water and Sanitation District, we said, in concert with our engineers, look, this is not something we've got to rush into. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when I say that, I'm talking about probably 500,000 plus. We've got to get this right. And if it delays us for 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to delay us. We've got to get it right. So we now know that we do not have time to get the final approval and to start construction this fall to complete the entire project. The entire project will take about 6 weeks, and it would have to be completed before the end of October. because that's when the asphalt plant shuts down and the ground freezes, and construction for what we're talking about can't be done. So that option is pretty much out the window from at this point. So we came up with a second option. The second option, we desperately need to solve the parking problem if we can, short term or quickly. So we said, let's look at an interim parking plan that could be completed in the fall of '26, and then we would pick up the plan again in the beginning of '27 to finish the site development. So the building wouldn't be included in that. That would just be increasing the parking up to 145 spots. So this is what that option 2 would look like. So there's the building from an aerial view, and we'll go back and forth just a little bit so you can kind of get your bearings. But this is a diagram of one of the pages of our site improvement plan. And so the red portion, and I'll try and get the red portion, which is this, is the current building, and the green portion is our current parking. Okay? So this would be, what you see up there would be the phase 1 parking improvement, and then the blue here and the blue here is actually what we call phase 2 of this site improvement plan, which would be the building expansion. So to concentrate on the site improvement, to remind you what we would be doing on the whole site improvement, we would be, let me back up here. We would be, oops. We would be cutting this hill up at the northeast corner of the property, and basically we would be moving a large part of this hill to the south side here, which is where we would increase our parking. To do that would require retaining walls, and so the retaining walls are in orange. So you can see the retaining wall that runs across the north side and down the east side. That's our biggest retaining wall. It would be on that corner of the property, and that retaining wall varies between 9 and 10 feet tall. And then from what we showed on the south and west side, there's 2 smaller retaining walls on the south and west side. So we would move the dirt from this side around to the south and the west side to pick up the parking on this side. All of the purple that you see on the diagram would be new parking. And the interim plan that we are talking about, or the option 2, would be everything in yellow. So what we would do is we would start this fall. We would put in this retaining wall. We would make this cut, move this dirt, but we wouldn't be ready for the dirt in front of the building. So we would stockpile the dirt in the grassy area. So we would put the retaining wall in. We would basically complete this portion of our site improvement plan very close to the finished product. We probably wouldn't pave it yet, but we would be very close to the finished product. And I'm sorry. And that's what that would be the interim plan. The follow-on to that interim plan then in the spring would be to finish this south and west portion. And the south and west portion basically moves the driveway coming in. It moves it closer to the road, which gives us the room to add the parking on the south and the west side. The interim plan, the yellow that you see, picks up about 35 parking spaces. So what would happen if people continued to park like up the drive? We would get everybody off of Parker Hills Court, and we should still end up with 20 or so parking spaces available above what we currently have. When the phase or the spring phase happened where we added the purple. This increases our parking by about another 30 spots because we actually would lose some parking where people park on the next to the drive, and this lower level parking goes away because of our detention pond. So that's a phase 2. There are some issues with that phase 2. One of the biggest two issues, really. The first one is it would probably be a different contractor that would do our work in the fall than would do the entire project in the spring. And typically contractors don't like to do that because somebody's going to be guaranteeing something maybe that somebody else had a part in. That's not insurmountable. Something that is a little bit more insurmountable is if we decided to finance the spring project, a lender would have some concerns about lien position because work had just been completed on the property. It's not an insurmountable issue, but it is an issue that we would have to look at. All right, so that's option 2. And now, option 3, which actually, to me, this is probably the most intriguing option. Option 3 does this. Option 3 continues our idea of doing interim parking. So we add the yellow parking here, and then we stop. So we would pick up 35 or so spaces. We stop until we actually do the phase 2 building, and we finish all of our southern area concurrent with doing our building improvement. That does a couple of things for us. The first thing it does for us is slide the second improvement down the road a bit, depending on how we're going to finance it. It would solve the lien issues from a financing point of view. In addition to that, what we would be picking up by completing the parking in the spring is only about another 35 spots. And the building's going to be full anyhow. So to get the parking up to 145 spaces, and then you have maybe a year or two down the road before you started the building, doesn't help you considerably because the building is maxed out. So the option 3 would say we're going to try and hit a middle road, so we're going to have enough parking to get us through an interim period, and then the rest of the parking would be included when we actually pulled the trigger and started doing the building. There are some other advantages to that as well, in that when you start your construction in your building, you have a high chance of damaging some of what you have just put in new maybe a year or two before. So it would be nice if we could, after all the big trucks were gone, finish our expansion on the south side. So those are the options that we have. Let me see. I think that's actually the majority of what. Let me say this too, because everybody's going to ask the question anyhow. From what we understand right now, because everybody wants to know what's it going to cost. From what we understand right now, this retaining wall that's on the north side is the larger of the two, the more expensive of the two. And that retaining wall alone is about $150,000 to put in. And the grading and everything that would go with that takes us to about $300,000 for that fall project of increasing the parking spaces up to the 35. The rest of the project is really still an unknown because we don't know what our costs are going to be infrastructure-wise, because much of that infrastructure would need to be put in as we were doing the improvement to the property. So if we had to do that improvement, the cost of the site work would be significant. Rough ballpark figures for the entire site work, you're probably in the $1 million range. So that gives you an idea. So this would be a $300,000 or so amount. The rest of just the site work is probably going to be in that $600,000 to $700,000 range, depending on how we come up with what the site's going to look like as far as our infrastructure. So that's where we are. I mean, that's kind of the site team part of it. We are working hard to finish everything that we can possibly do, and then get more direction from the church and the leadership of when we actually start pulling the trigger on some of these things. We have tentatively lined up some contractors, because if you're going to do it, you have to let them know ahead of time. So we are still progressing to be able to do that interim parking plan in the fall. If we did that, it would start in October, and it would be about a 3-week project. It would be about a week or a week and a half for the grading, and about a week and a half for the retaining wall work. So that's where we are as a building or a site improvement. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The yellow dot. Joy Lutheran ties into, they tie into the water main up here. So they are included into the district. They've already been included in the district, and their tie-in is along Pine Drive. Well, they have an 8-inch line. They have an 8-inch line feeding their site, which is what we would have. So essentially, we have an 8-inch line that runs from here. So our water is actually closest here, and this is the same here. So to tie in, they won't let us come back this direction and tie in. You would have to tie back into the main here. They probably, and I don't know this, but they probably bring their water in from here and tie it in some other way. So to finish the question, so the Parker Water and Sanitation engineers say, when you tie in, this is how you will do it. And so this is their preliminary tie-in. Yeah. Yeah, because I think we're being taped so that people can hear it at home, I think.
Okay. My other question would be, looked at Parker's future plans in terms of expansion of the city itself. I mean, is there some possibility that Parker is going to extend out that way? Because they're kind of reaching a max to the west.
Yeah, so I don't know where Parker itself is going. Right now there are no plans that Parker Water and Sanitation has to extend the district to the east. So we would be causing that extension into there. And I think I might know where you're headed with that question, and that is sometimes if you put in infrastructure that would be beneficial to other property owners, you can get reimbursed for that infrastructure that you put in. Unfortunately, none of that would apply to us. And you would recapture that money when the actual benefit happened. So let's suppose you had this and we actually ran the water up the property line here. We would bear the cost of that. And then as the county or city or whatever went further that way and made other people tie in, then we would recoup some of that cost. But at this point, there's no cost that we could recoup. We will bear this on our own. We also reminded them that we're tax free, and because once we put it in, we dedicate it to Parker Water and Sand, and they have to take care of it. So we told them, hey, we're also tax free, and you're not going to make any money on us by taking care of your thing. Just let us have a fire tap. So yeah, it was a good conversation. It was fun. Great guys. All right, what else? Tim. I don't know how big the water main is running down Pine. All I know is the water main that that would make us connect our system into, or our water main that we would install would be 8-inch. So what you're saying is keep it on the south side and bring it back in on the south side. I think it would require another 8-inch another 8-inch line there. I don't know. We are not at that point yet. So this is the plan that they gave us in our meeting with them, and we have several options. We can say no. Wait, our first option is give us a fire tap. Second option is we don't like the plan, let's do something. Actually, the second option is because the district manager actually makes that final decision. You can petition the water board, and so you're going above the district manager's head. So there's several steps. If all of that fails, then you do exactly what you're talking, Tim, and maybe you were saying too, and that is you begin to fine tune with a pencil and say, there's got to be a cheaper way to do it than boring all the way under Pine Drive. Anything else? Yes. Yeah, so when the building was built, they brought a water line, and I think it probably ties in here. They brought a water line from there all the way on the south side of Joy Lutheran and ended it right there with a fire hydrant. So it's down on that corner there, and that is the line that they now say we don't know why they allowed that to go in, because officially when that went in, they should have required inclusion into the district because you're getting benefit from Parker Water and Sanitation. So it does feed the fire hydrant. Yes, ma'am. That's the way they approved it 26 years ago. Yeah. So the fire tap is a 6-inch line. So in other words, from wherever we tap into that 8-inch line, we have to bring a 6-inch line into the building. So we're actually thankful it's an 8-inch line there, because if it wasn't an 8-inch line, we'd have more difficulty. If they give us the fire tap, if they allow us to do the fire tap, it's actually relatively simple. We run a line from here up because we have to feed the building, and then we tap off of that. We tap off of that line. They've already granted us I don't know if it's a favor or not, but normally if you were included in a district, normally you would have a domestic water fee and you would also have an irrigation fee. So you would pay 2 inclusion fees. And in our discussion, they have agreed to eliminate the irrigation tap fee and let us set a separate meter on our domestic tap, which is about already a $65,000 inclusion. I got to say something else too, and that is because I just saw my buddy David nodding his head back there. Here's another thing that is God working in this. And David Holstein probably knows, but probably not very many other people. Since 2024, David Kurz has had a water meter on our well usage, and they came to us originally and said, this is the size tap we think you need, because it's based on 5 gallons of water a day per person in a 1,500 gallons, and you multiply that over a month, and it takes our tap inclusion fee from that $200,000 number to about $375,000. And we said, but we know how much water we use because we have a guy in our church family that has been monitoring the water for 2.5 years. We can tell you every day how much we did. And they said, oh, well, if you have that, we will we will let you buy the tap fee that fits that. It's about $175,000 or $200,000 savings right there. It's just, it's God. I mean, I love David for doing it, but I love God even more for prompting him to do it. Any other question? I'm here after if you want to talk more. Um, it's just not fair. What we would have to do, we donate our well, we donate all the water that's beneath the property, and we pay them 200 some $1,000 for the privilege of doing it. That's the way that it works. So, no, to answer your question, no, when you do that, you have to dedicate it to them. Say it again? No, they cap it. Yeah, they cap it. But they have the number of acre feet that, so the water that's beneath our property, there's a certain amount of acre feet that we could draw out of that, and it's just water rights, and they require you to give all of those water rights to Parker Water and Sanitation, and then they cap your well so that you can't draw water, because then you're taking their water from them, which used to be our water. So, there's still other things, I meant to mention this too, and that is if we do, in fact, do our interim plan, there is an additional benefit of that, and that is we do need a massive amount of dirt brought in. I had to laugh. Josh says he sees a dump truck full of dirt driving down the road, and he thinks, oh, good, there goes someone's salary. I think, turn in, we need dirt. But it would allow us to stockpile that dirt. It would allow us some parking, because how we handle doing church in the midst of construction is significant. That's another benefit. Kicking this final improvement down the road until we do the building would be, we wouldn't have to live in 3 months of construction doing the parking, and then 6 or 8 months later, whenever the building would start, go through all of it again. It would all be combined into one time. So those are the options, and Josh and the elders can speak to how we choose where we're going from here, how we go from here. But that's what we have as options and the benefits of them. Which pile? The one that we put over here is about 3,000 cubic yards. It won't be a mountain, because what they will do is because to save money, they're just pushing it off. And so it'll be stockpiled as just pushing it off. And what will happen is the grade will just come from there and continue down. So unfortunately, that's the only place we have to put it right now, because it really needs to be out front. It's just. So. Yeah. So we have to do what they call a grading, erosion, and sediment control plan. And that plan is going to be approved by the county, and then you have to pull a permit according to that plan, and that plan says this is how we're going to manage any kind of, we're grading, we're going to manage erosion and sediment so that we keep it on our own property. And like for this first phase, it's about a $7,000 or $8,000 bill, just that erosion control to keep it on our own property. Yes. Clover? 87 paved spots. Yes, ma'am. So if you, okay, Glad laughs at me, but when I drive, I'm going 1, 2, 3 when I leave the church, because I'm counting how many people are here that aren't in a paved parking spot. So they're parked on the side over here, parked on the other side of the drive-in that's gravel now. parked on on Parker Hills Court. So 30-ish cars that aren't in a paved parking spot. So some of those people would continue to park in this interim plan. They would continue to park on gravel, such as all up and down the driveway. That would continue to be parking. What we'd be trying to do is get people off the street. So that would bring, 5 or 6 or 7 cars off of the street, and then still allow us about 25 to 30 cars more, so that the net result would be that when you came on a Sunday morning, there should be 25 to 30 empty spots. Uh-huh. So Douglas County, believe it or not, has a limit to the number of parking spaces that a church can have. And we have petitioned them, and they have approved our petition to go to 125% of that number. So with a 335 seat worship center, which is what we have, they would, and I can't do the math in my head, but it's around 110 or so, 15 spots. And we petitioned them, and they approved our petition in our submittal to go to 25% above that, which is, I think, 147. So barring getting a variance from the county to go to more, that 147 reaches our limit. The other thing, Clover, is there's kind of all right, it reaches our limit, but I will show you this as well, and that is, let me go forward here. Okay, so all right, so up at the top in the yellow, that's where our parking actually ends. If you look at our plan, our grading actually continues that grade around to about right down in here. And we don't label it, but it is overflow parking. So we have allowed for what we would call overflow parking, but it's not official parking, and it's not paved parking, because we are at our limit. And then when like Josh asked, how big can the church be, or how big site-wise? We are not only limited by how big the building can be, but then you're also limited because they also have a minimum. You have to have 1 parking space for every 2 people. So, when you get to that spot, you have to get, or 3 people, I think. I said 2, I think it's 3. But you have to meet the minimum. And so we're actually trying to balance parking spaces with building size. And that's where you hit that 700-ish number. Did you have a question, Carl? Yeah, so what ends up happening is, so we've answered all the referral comments except for the fire and the Parker Water and Sanitation District comment. What we have already gotten approval for, and that is, if we did just the site improvement, we could move the inclusion costs and some of the infrastructure into the building cost. Does that make sense, Carl? So we would want to put the infrastructure in that's going to be under the grading and stuff that we're doing, but like maybe going into boring under Pine Drive, we could stop at certain points, not do that infrastructure, because you could do that follow-on later without tearing something out. And the inclusion fees could wait until we actually did the building, because that's where the fire sprinkler issue comes into play. And we have requested, and they have already granted, that if they make us need us to be included, if they make us be included, that we can push those inclusion fees into the building cost. Yeah. Yeah, so that's yeah. So the reason we kept all of our parking on the this side of the building is because, first off, that's our septic system right here, and we need to stay out of that if we're going to stay on it. And so the building, the future expansion of the building comes up here like this, and that adds about another 350-ish seats or so to what we currently have, and the parking wraps all the way around the building. So the parking ends up being all the way around the building. So, but we purposely stayed away from the west side of the site to stay away from our septic for now in this phase. Once you actually went to if you expanded the worship center and made the worship center, expanded at the, yeah, it's not working. Expand it this way. So basically the phase 3, the future phase, the master plan future phase would be to take and expand out a little bit on either side and move that wall back about the same distance that it is from there. And that's where you'd pick up the extra space. So, but that's just, that's really preliminary. It'd have to be, we don't know that that's exactly what it would look like. Maybe we'd do something different, but we do know that what we would do would be wrap the parking all the way around it. Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. Have you spoken with contractors or the engineer to discuss what infrastructure might be necessary for the preliminary, like this fall parking expansion, if we would need to give them an extra route into the property on some dirt or anything like that?
Yeah, that's actually one of the good things about it. There is no underground infrastructure up where we are in that corner, because all of the drainage runs in the parking lot, and all of the infrastructure ends up being here and in this area, and then if we have to do, and we will, the water would be over here. So that is actually the nice part about it is, Micah, is in the yellow area, there's no underground infrastructure at all. Yeah. 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 Or lots of little ones. I'm okay with that too. I'm even okay with sand.
Hi. Earlier this year with one of our meetings, the question was brought up, what is our philosophy of debt? And we've talked about a lot of details and things here, but I haven't heard a plan, or maybe I've not read the right things, but I just wondered if there could be a response to that.
Yes, ma'am, and that I will direct you to the elders for that. So how the paying thing all works out. And you know what? So I know there's, and I'll just say this, and I know there's there might even be frustration on some part, because when are we going to get some costs? But you can see, until we get through this referral process, the cost is just, it's like trying to hit a flying dartboard or something. We hoped that we didn't see the thing coming about the water, and we thought we'd have costs for this meeting actually, and maybe they could speak to it more. It's just that I'm reluctant, and the civil engineer, everybody's reluctant to give cost until we know what it's going to be. But the elders I know have a philosophy about how it would work, and I'll let them answer
I think
that.
initially we're hoping to pay for cash for the yellow part. I think that's doable, and we'll get costs and figure out how much it's going to cost. We're hoping, like Josh said, we're praying for some outside source to just want to give us a bunch of money, and praying for that, for somebody to write a big check, and we'll cross the debt question when we get to it. We're hoping not to take on debt, but we're not totally opposed to taking debt if it makes sense as well.
Glenn, I'll add this to what I said, Glenn, and that is it's a real benefit that we have sufficient money to pay for the yellow portion, because it really is a big deal. Lien positions on a mortgage if you did decide to finance it. Because if we had to finance that and then some kind of follow-on financing, it might even stop it and not allow you to do it because of everybody's trying to be in first position and the possibility of liens. It is a bit of a quagmire. So being able to pay that out of cash on hand is a huge benefit. Yeah.
And Josh has said the congregation will have to approve any kind of debt. So there would be a vote for that as well.
I just wanted to ask Brett if you could give us a summary of how we can pray for the whole water thing. Specifically, what can we specifically pray for besides just mercy on their part or whatever, but specifics?
I've got to tell you, I am so glad you asked that question, because I have sat in building construction meetings where people leave feeling like those terrible people at Parker Water and Sand or the fire district. And brothers and sisters, they're just doing their job, right? South Metro Fire, they're taking care of people, right? So that's the first thing that I would really say. If you see my heart, it is, don't think that they're picking on us because we're a church or they don't like us, or they're just doing their job. And the second thing is, I don't want us to ever get the idea that somehow they're not being fair, and they have their priorities, and that's what we've tried to do when we've met with them. Is we know your priorities, we respect your priorities, and we certainly are not here to try and badger you into somehow not doing that. We just want to work to a solution that maybe is good for both of us. And so when we pray, if you look in like the prayer request, it's just that they would be open to what we suggest, that we would listen, that we would be wise in how it comes about, and that in the whole thing, they would end at the end and say, man, those people at Parker Hills, they were great to work with. And, you know, I don't ever want us to get to the point, at least from my heart, that we are somehow saying, hey, God, make them do this, or no, we want a fair solution, and we want to see it, and we want God to solve this problem. And so what I do is I come before him and I say, this is it. I don't know. I will tell you, and I've told the elders, I believe with everything within me that this is of God to do. I wouldn't be part of this team if I didn't think this was of God to do this. And so then it's just going back to him and saying, it's of you. Show yourself mighty in this thing. Man, bring problems, but fix them. So it is that, God, I don't know the answer to this. I can see some things that I think you're doing, but we're just asking you to solve it, and solve it in such a way that we don't come across as ugly or mean. Or I read, like I said, I'm not good. Anyhow, that's my heart. Does that answer your question? Okay, that's a good question too. We're requesting now that they do something they've never done before and grant us a fire tap into the fire line, and that's it. We're done. That's what we're asking. If we got our answer the way we wanted it, they would come back this week and say, we're granting you a fire tap, and South Metro Fire would say, they give you a fire tap, we're done. We put in our fire tap and we're finished. That would be our highest request right now. So that's fine. It is. It is. So basically, it kind of does two things. So it would take the hydrant closer to the building. We would bear that cost, and the only line that would actually connect into Parker Water and Sand would be a 6-inch line that would only be used if the building was on fire and the sprinkler system went off. We would put the infrastructure in for future use of it, but we wouldn't pay the inclusion fee, and we would just run one line from the building to the hydrant. We wouldn't pay inclusion fee. We wouldn't pay for anything else. It would just be that line up to the building. We know we're going to have to do that because the cost to do a cistern is prohibitive at that kind of flow and that kind of time. So that's a really great question.
So the building itself, are we submitting anything, given that to Douglas County? Because you said that on third phase we're not building the parking lot back that way because of the third phase.
Yeah,
So
yes.
so is Douglas County seeing this print at all?
Yes. So Douglas County, right now, they have, for building, they have the blue and the red. That's what we're getting approved at this point. So that is an administration wing at this point and a youth wing over there. That's all that's being approved. And they're only approving the footprint of it. They're only saying, yeah, we're going to let you improve your site to some approximation of an administration wing on this area, a bigger lobby, and a youth wing on that side. So once we actually decide to pull the trigger on the building portion of it, there's another whole process to get through the building process. And they haven't seen what we call phase 3. And that would require another site improvement plan, similar to this one, where we would now show the footprint of what we would just call phase 3, whether it be here or there or wherever we would put it. And that would be another complete separate site improvement plan. So what they have seen is just the blue for building expansion at this point. We're loosely calling that phase 3, would be, it would actually be two things. It would increase, it would move, it would expand the worship center somehow, right? And it would finish out the parking. That would be kind of a phase 3 that would take us to maximum use of the site. And phase 3 is not even on the drawing board yet. Yes.
So who decides between options 1, 2, and 3, and how is that decision made?
Yeah. So we will do our best to try and inform the elders of the pros and the cons. One is off the table. There is another option, I guess. One is don't do anything until the fall. I mean, until the spring, and then do something there. But so I have a list of kind of what I see as pros and cons of an interim plan here, spring starting that versus interim wait to the building. And I'll do my best to, keep the elders informed, but ultimately I'll let Josh speak to how the decision ends up being. So at this point, we're just following the directions of the elder and trying and get as far as we can, so that when they say, yeah, go, we're not behind the 8 ball. Yep.
2 questions. So just for clarification, this is phase 1, which includes the parking and the building expansion, but then kind of going back to Clover's point, phase 2, phase 3 would be expanding the auditorium and wraparound parking. So this parking here doesn't get us to 700 people in the auditorium, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's kind of semantic, Sam, but because we wanted to submit and get approval for building expansion and parking, and we thought the timing might be different on it, we did one submittal with 2 phases. So what we have now is a 2-phase submittal. Phase 1 is just the site and the parking. Phase 2 is the building expansion, the admin wing and the youth wing. And then any future expansion would be some more other phases. So we specifically did the site improvement in a 2-phase so that we don't have to go through the process again when we start with the admin wing and over here. It's all done, and that we could phase it in as we wanted to phase it in different times.
Okay. And then the more important question for me is on here, it's hard to see, but where's the motorcycle only parking spots?
Do you know the grass that he was talking about? No. Nope. This would stay just like it is. I can show you the plans on the outside there. Basically, what happens is the lobby doubles in size, right? Because instead of being a diagonal, instead of a triangle, it becomes a square. The admin wing is along that side, and there's about 3,000 square feet to that. And then we excavate the lobby, which gives us classroom space below the lobby, and the admin wing would be classroom space. So we pick up significant amount of classroom space in the lower level. Yeah, but this part of the building would look exactly the same when you got finished, except there'd probably be little sprinkler heads up there. Right? I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Oh, I'm sorry.
When do we need to approve moving forward with even just the yellow portion?
So we have contractors with us penciled in to start in October and November, recognizing that we don't have a go-ahead yet, and we will need to make a decision on that in the next 3 to 4 weeks for the interim portion of it. I mean, they're really good. Both of them are phenomenal, and they understand church and how it works. But I mean, we're in August already. 4 weeks from now is the middle of September. To get this done, we've got to be moving dirt by the second or third week in October. So we are really pushing the deadline. And there again, part of the elders have said, get us numbers when you can, and we can't get numbers because we didn't know exactly what we're going to have to do. So it's not because the elders haven't asked for the numbers. It's because we haven't been able to give them and been afraid to give them because we're not sure what they were in the thing. But now we have pretty solid numbers because we have actual bids for those parts over there, and so we're fairly confident about that. So we know that's in the costs are in the $300,000 range, and you should add some contingency on top of it, but we're in a good ballpark there.
I should be used to talking into this.
Well, sing into it then, Peter.
Yeah, maybe that'll be better. I can't do it without a guitar. Is the interim parking expansion something we want to do regardless of how things pan out with funding, Parker Water, Parker Sewer? What if we can't afford the whole expansion altogether? Is that something we want to do?
If you're asking
if it's
me,
the only
my
thing we
opinion,
do,
it would
right?
be absolutely. That actually is one thing that is good about pushing the rest of the parking into the building phase. So when I mentioned a minute ago, we have this grading, erosion, sediment control plan and permit. That's actually good for 3 years. Our site improvement plan is good for 3 years. So we could start this interim, and you could actually put indefinite on the finish. So so you could figure out how you're going to finance it, have a campaign if you're going to do that or whatever. But from my viewpoint, and I'm more in tune to it because I've been counting people parking, I don't know how we can not have more parking. I mean, it just, I know people come and leave because there's no parking. That's terrible. So, yes, sir.
Would there be any additional parking lot lighting installed as part of the interim
No, actually, there's not. And actually, we're actually going to lose the light post that's out there next to the shed. Would have to be removed. We might remove it and re-put it back in, so we do have some there. We haven't worked out that detail with the contractor yet, but we do know, and I know people are not going to like this, the big trees along the the east side, 3 or 4 of those are going to have to come out because parking goes that way. We know those have to come out. That's in our bid, as well as we have to remove one of our light poles there. So, yes, sir.
So like on the map, it looks like the green, like the parking right now is going in front of the building, and it doesn't look like it's included in the parking lot drawn. So are we removing that parking?
No, that's a good question. If you look there, all right. So here's what it looks like. So kind of take a picture of that in your mind and leave out, this area right in here. But just look here and here and here, right in here. And now when we flip the switch, you can see there it is. There's the parking in front of the building. Right now, our loop extends like this, right? And then it comes back here. And then the driveway comes here and out. So if you can picture that, there's the current parking, right? And there's where it is on that site thing. It's here, here, and wraps just a little around the building.
No, what I'm talking about is like where it wraps around the youth wing. It has a little green like square that is not included in the drawing of the parking lot.
Yeah, so that's really observant. And you're probably the only one that saw that. But good job. Here it is. So what happens is, see, there's parking right here. And if you look at this diagram, the parking disappears right here at that spot. Is that what you're talking about? The parking disappeared there. It disappeared because the youth wing is big enough, it took the parking out.
I'm saying on top of the youth wing.
Okay, so on top of the youth wing right here
Uh-huh.
is this back parking right here.
Is that going to be taken out?
No, that will stay just like it is.
Okay.
We will actually, right about this spot right here is where we will, loosely speaking, is where the yellow would end. So we do extend a little bit that way, but all of the green that you see there would stay.
Okay, and my second question is the playground going to stay there or is it moving?
Oh, the playground's staying.
Okay.
Yeah. I ain't no fool, man. Don't mess with kids. No,
Brett.
it's staying. It at this point, it's staying, and it might even be improved some when we get done with it.
Brett, quick question. So in order to do the yellow expansion, we have to have a fire tap into the building. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
Nope. We would have to have a fire tap into the building to do phase 2,
Okay.
which is building work, because you're fine with your building that you have, even though we're not in code by not having a sprinkled building. As soon as you do a remodel to it, you now have to conform the entire building to current code. So we wouldn't have to do a fire tap into the line or pay inclusion fees until we actually started the work on the building, and then we
Okay.
would have to.
That's what I thought. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
One more question. How is the building committee and the elders even considering the idea, like, if you build it, they will come? Like, once we add the parking, we're inviting more people to come, but then we don't have the internal space to handle that. So it feels like adding this parking, it's needed now, but it's also going to increase pressure short term to get phase 2 and even then phase 3 done, with the worship center not having enough space to support the number of people that would come with the parking.
Right. So I'll answer kind of my part of that, and then they can answer their part. In our mind, we need those 30 to 40 spots right now to service the people that are coming right now. Okay? That's one reason that it might make some sense to not do the front portion and add another 35 or 40 spots for people that you can't service inside the building because your building's not big enough. You could, no Sunday school space even. So that's why there is some reason and logic in don't put that expense out until you can handle that expense inside. So the 30 to 35 spots would just be saying we need those spots now for the people that are currently here. And then the other 35 or 40 spots that we gain, we really can't handle those. In my mind, you can't handle those people until you increase the size of the building with the phase 2.
And another part of that is we, at some point, we're going to have to go to 2 services in order to get more people in here. And we will probably have to do that at some point between it adding to the parking lot and adding to the building. So those extra parking spaces will allow us to have kind of overlap of people with the 2 services. And we're hoping not to stay in 2 services. We're hoping to stay there as short of a time as we can and get back to 1 service once we have a building that can hold all of the people that we can hold in the building.
What a great problem to have. I mean, isn't it? I mean, we pull our head out. We say, how are we going to come up with this money? But I know some of you were here the first Sunday that the building was here. And I don't know how many people were there, but around the first time that we showed up, there were 30 people here, right? We could sit in this little section. How wonderful that God's blessed this way. These are wonderful problems. And I'm excited. So if you see me, I'm excited about the whole thing. I'm pumped about it. It's just, it's a wonderful thing.
You were saying that you're hoping to cash out the yellow part. Is that already in the church funds, or no, that's part of contributing to the church building fund that I know we have online?
From my understanding, we have enough in the bank in savings to be able to cover that portion of it. Does that sound right? Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. So we would hope that people would give more in order to be able to fund that and then use some savings.
You're talking about just the yellow portion, just the 300,000. Yeah.
And we do have more than 300 in our savings. We just don't earmark all of our savings for whatever we want to spend it on. So in the traffic light metaphor, half our budget we try to hold on to, or whatever number that is, that's kind of red light, and then 50 or 60 grand for, emergency fund for some capital improvement or repair. And then money on top of that is green light play money. And that's where we're like, Zach's like, we're close. So we're close to 300 grand in that green light category. So I think our savings balance is closer to 700 or something. Okay. Yeah, great. Thanks. Yeah.
This question might be more for Josh and Ryan. Does this, just the yellow parking expansion, which I know we need, does this put any pressure on our ability to support Christ Church Elizabeth in the near future?
No. I mean, cash flow wise, we're pretty solid if you've watched the stewardship reports in the bulletin. We have the most aggressive budget this year than we've ever had. And I don't remember when, by the end of second quarter, we were still hitting budget. So that's happening, praise God. So our cash flow is where we generate the support for Christ Church, or where we pay for Christ Church. They're in the budget, and we're meeting budget. One of the reasons we keep that sort of red light category is because a lot of our expenses are representing real people. So if something traumatic happened and we had spent $300,000 and spent all of our green light and a chunk of our yellow light money, we would invade the red light to keep food on the Opperman's table. So, I mean, those are just our church's priorities. I know they would be our people's priorities. They're our elders' priorities, our finance team's priorities. So that red light money is not some sacrosanct nest egg and people go hungry. It's there so they don't. And we have like 6 months to figure out what are we going to do to keep paying these people because the cash flow dried up, which I can't even imagine that scenario, but something like that, you know. Yeah. There's another question earlier. Who decides which option we choose for the next step? Brett laid out 3 of them. I mean, the elders decide that, but the way we lead, we don't ever just decide that on our own. We decide that in a similar way to the way a couple works out a decision in their home. There is a leader, but he listens well and tries to find out, is this a wise move? And so you've heard the 3 options. We'd love to hear from you which of those options makes the most sense. We'll talk and pray amongst ourselves. We'll talk to Brett. His input is really influential among us. I'll tell you personally, I like the 3rd option where we do this work and it gains us a little parking space that maximizes how many cars we can fit on the property with the money we have right now. And at Christmas Eve, I don't know if you remember this, but there were a few extra chairs over there facing this way and a few extra chairs on the east side facing west, and it was as weird as could be. But it gave us more room in this building to seat in this, it gave us more seats in this room to seat people. Well, we can't do that indefinitely if we don't have places to put cars. So it does buy us a little bit of time having those extra spots back there. And if we go to 2 services, which we don't love that idea, but we love it more than borrowing money to expand our building, it would just allow a tiny bit more passing space for some people to linger after the first service and chat, and people to come early for the second service and still have a spot. And that sort of thing's going to happen. So on Easter Sunday, we had 2 services and put a half hour in between the meetings, and people from the first service hustled out, and we found it's doable. So we may have to do that for a little while and hope that as the congregation grows and we have these 2 services, we can work hard to keep it one church, and God willing, we'll watch the building fund go up and we'll be able to do some things that get us back to one service as quick as possible. So that's what I'm praying for. So yeah, the question I was trying to answer is who decides which of those options? I mean, the elders decide that. We don't really know how to propose a motion that gets the congregation's approval for the plan, the ideas, because the plan is in such flux and it's going to take so much time to play out. So the congregational approval will be each phase of the plan that requires funding. So the congregation will approve, yeah, we'll spend whatever the best builder estimate is or bid is to do that parking lot thing. We'll put that before you and say we need $324,000. And if the congregation goes, great, let's do it, we'll do it. And if they go, nope, let's not, we'll go, all right, we're not going to do it. So let's figure out how to continue doing ministry with the problems we're facing without that money. We would just do that. That's how we believe God leads his church. And we would go, okay, God spoke through his people. That surprised us. Let's figure out what we did wrong in trying to lead, and had people say, no, that's not a good idea. So that's how we'll handle it. Approvals from the congregation at each step of the funding, each step of expense. I think, anyway, yeah, does that sound good to you other guys, the other elders? I don't think we talked about like that specific piece. So yeah, there were a couple other things I wrote down. Yeah, that basically covers what I jotted down. So yeah, any other questions for me or the other elders? Any other comments from the other elders? Jim, James? Yeah, cool.
So going back to the church planting conversation, is the limitation on church planting more so we don't have the people to do that, or is we don't have the finances necessary to support another CCE?
It's mostly the person. The biggest catalyst to a church plant is the planter. And if God gives us that guy, we'll train and pour into him and let the church get to know him and evaluate him and do the same thing we did for Christ Church Elizabeth. Okay, where's the optimal location? Who wants to be part of that? Give this guy as much exposure as possible so people are like, he's gifted. I want to be part of this idea. And we'd plant. So it's mostly the planter. We need that guy. That's what I would say.
I think it's mostly a long-term benefit to have a larger church to be able to support the residences, the interns, and to build those organically so that we can have more of a process of bringing guys up in order to plant churches. Instead of just hoping a guy falls in our lap, kind of like James did, we can actually invest into guys and build them up in order to be able to prepare them for church planting.
Yeah, does that answer your question, Cole? That's a good question. The situation with James worked really cool. We had this guy in our congregation. He was working as an engineer. It was stressing him out. It just didn't seem like a good idea. Why are we not? And we didn't have money in the budget for James Opperman, but we had money in savings. So we said to the church family, we'd like to take this guy onto our staff, and if we need to, pay him out of savings and go negative cash flow for a while, because he's a gifted guy and we want to plant a church and our building's full and blah, blah, blah. And suddenly our giving went up and we met budget and we didn't have to spend money out of our savings, at least much, I don't think any, to pay the guy for the first year that he was on our staff. And then the first year that we paid his full salary for the church plant, it was in the budget. And this year we're paying 3/4 of his salary in the budget, and it's all in the budget. We didn't need to spend any money out of savings. So James was just here and we went, we really should pay this guy. If we need to, we'll take money out of savings. And God's people provided the money. So we'd rather have money built into the budget and be able to advertise. We have a residency. If you come, we can pay you, $5,000 a month and provide housing. And you can live here and work for us for, 4 years and figure out if you're a church planter. So we'd love to have the money in the budget. But God does it both ways, I guess, we've learned.
Okay, so right now we have space in here and we don't have space out there to park. So this interim parking solves that problem. We will then move on to the next problem, which will be more people will come. So, but at least it gets us a little further down the road. And what I like from the very early stages was, let's see how separate we can make these phases. Because then we can come to you and say, okay, the horrifying amount for this expansion is this much. Right now, Brett is saying, here's where we're trying to go with as much specificity as we've got. This parking lot part is much easier. So we can say, yeah, around 300,000. And yeah, Zach will just find it all. So, but we are not going to say, hey, we've got this wonderful idea. Why don't you sign up to funding as a congregation? This, who knows how many millions of dollars for a building. So the separate phases allow us to say, this is what this gets us. Here's about what this costs. So that's what we're up to. And then, so basically decent estimates before votes is what we're trying to do. Not, hey, let's just get something halfway built and then the congregation feels stuck. That's disgusting. We investigated borrowing money. We found some guys. We think these guys are fabulous. And we really hate borrowing money. So maybe we do. We've got some guys waiting out there in the wings, love these guys, love their ministry, love their heart, hate paying interest. So that remains to be seen. So And then, of course, the overall thing of you have to have a unified plan or you're going to do stupid stuff like, oh, we built this here and we shouldn't have built it here. We have to knock it down. No. So it's like each phase is part of an overall goal.
Yeah. So a lot of what we have gotten to so far is paperwork and going back and forth, but we actually do now have a site team. David Van Dennen is on it. Chris Carter is on it. Jason Inskeep is on it. And Dave Holstein is on it. So each of those guys has building or engineering background work. And of course, you know, not only is he incredibly smart and wise, but David's our building guy. So the plan would be now, once we get a direction, those members would be the primary contact for things, and there would be they would give the direction and focus from that point on. So what we've asked those men for is a commitment through the site improvement portion, and then if and when we go to phase 2, which is the building portion, then we would or maybe would readjust that. Certainly we would add other expert type people on that committee. So the site team is there, and that's what's running with the site team at this point. So their involvement up to this point has been exceptionally good, but not involved in every one of the details. But that will change as soon as we get direction now to say, okay, this is where we're headed. Then they'll be, their involvement will be a lot more. So does that answer your question, Carl? Yeah, I thought about that actually. Yeah.
Do we have an attorney that's overseeing contracts and stuff? Is that your question, Ed? Not as far as I know, but we do have a very experienced owner's representative, so I'll defer to him.
Before we start this project, we do need an attorney involved because he needs to give us the documentation that we need to ensure that the things that we do here fit with future financing. So we, and my expert, I don't know if I'm an expert, but my knowledge is in the site construction development portion of it. It's not in the legal thing, although I've been involved enough to know that you can really get twisted really quick if all of a sudden work has started on the property and then you try and get financing or you try and do something in the future. And the other issue that we need help with is we have an engineering firm that we've hired for an observation as we do things, and we have purposely decided that they would be from soup to nuts, so that they did our soil borings, they're doing the design work for the asphalt, they're doing the design work for our retaining walls, so that their responsibility in totality for engineering stuff rests with those people, so there's not finger pointing. This dual phase here creates a little bit of problems there, Ed, because most certainly probably we will not use the same contractor because he's not large enough to do the whole thing. And so there'll be some coordination on who's responsible for what. And that'll take a little bit of planning, specifically on compaction things and all, if we had settling or whatever. So we actually do need an attorney as we do those contracts.
That's a good question. Brings up another prayer request If you know somebody who's loves the Lord, and not that we wouldn't pay them, we'd want them to get paid, but we want somebody that loves the Lord to get paid and do good work for us. So let us know about that. And please continue to talk to the elders, the building team people, Brett, when you have questions, other ideas. We get all sorts of questions. We get them. Carl keeps a list of them and sends them back to the elders all the time. Did we answer this one and this one? So people will suggest, like, we could save money on the sewer if we just told people you can't pee or poo when you come here. You need to go before you come. Someone will suggest that, because we've heard all sorts of suggestions on we don't mind. Tell us every idea you've got. Sometimes we haven't thought of them, and we'll bounce them off smarter people than us. This is not what elders get trained to do or paid to do. But we do have responsibility to steer the congregation through every management need that arises. Thankfully, we have people far more expert than us, but we want to continue to listen to our congregation, all right? So that's what we're committed to. If there are no more questions. Yeah, I mean, our normal typical hard sell, you know. We're kind of mean and nasty, and so we're going to just do that. Honest truth, there's a good number of people who attend who probably don't know we're trying to raise money for a building, because I just want to pray it in. Maybe that's lame. At some point, we might need to talk about it more, because we can't do anything because the money's not coming in, which I could imagine happening, but might be a little surprised if that would happen. Yeah, we're not going to... Everybody advises you hire a capital campaign professional to come in and do all the... I don't even want to do that, you know? We're figuring this out as we go, but there are things churches are supposed to do, and God will move, like pray and unite and love the lost and see a vision for the future, and we can do those things, and we'll just pray. So I watched last night this documentary 2 nights ago called Casa Bonita, Mi Amor. It's on Paramount Plus. It's about the guys from South Park, Trey Parker and Matt Walsh, who created that show, South Park, that really helpful show that a lot of Christians enjoy. Those are both billionaires. Both of those guys are billionaires. They bought Casa Bonita for a couple $1 million, set a budget to renovate it at 6.5, and it actually cost them $40 million to get Casa Bonita up and running again. And they just dropped it like you and me would drop a nickel. I'm praying for that now. Before I was praying, God, give us some guy who writes a check to hire a football player to play for CU for 1 season. Now I'm praying for some pagan. I mean, the church could generate it as well. But I'm praying for somebody to go, I got billions, and I did like Casa Bonita as a hobby, and how about if you guys could use 10 million? I'd be like, we actually could, thank you. So I just want to pray for that sort of thing. Maybe that's lame, but I don't know any better because I've never done this before. So I just want to pray that money in. That's my honest strategy. I'm not joking, and I'm not trying to be pious. I don't have a better idea. So that's all I got. Yeah, okay. In the meantime, the elders are going to try to keep eldering. We know exactly what our job is. We're going to keep our eye on the ball, and we've got excellent people who are going to help steer us through all the technicalities of this. So make sure you thank Brett and pray for him and pray for his wife, because he's carrying a heavy load, but he loves that, so it seems like he's thriving. It seems to me. So, yeah. Okay, good. No other questions? Nothing? Okay, great. Noah, do you want to close us in prayer? Those were such good questions. I was so pleased you were paying attention. I thought, that's a leader. All right, you can pray. Thanks.
Dear God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for this time we get to have together at this meeting. I thank you for sending your son to die for us, and I thank you for this building, and I pray that you will just help us expand it. Amen.